Okay, so we can see here that these 7 stars are depicting a relationship to these very same 7 stars. The connection that they have is via, at this moment in time, the Pleiades, because astronomically we know that that is what that is displaying right there, the Pleiades. Now, once again, these 7 in representation to the rising Kundalini serpent are going to represent 7 chakras. We're going to find out that this knowledge of the 7 chakras and its manipulation, meaning it's a materially corrupted spiritual truth, meaning the chakras are there with or without the rising Kundalini. It's something a part of your God-given created physiology. Okay, it's an actuality, it's really there. And we find out here that it describes it in verse 16, where it says, "The stars which roll over fire are those which transgress the commandment of God before their time arrived, for they came not in their proper season." That's describing that they did something early. Okay, they offered something early. And we know that through the historical record, we find out that mankind had civilization thrust upon him suddenly. And this was due to the spiritual rebellion that took place, of which the sons of God, i.e. the Anunnaki, were a part of. The Anunnaki and the sons of God are one and the same. And we can relate those to the modern terminology of what the aliens are calling themselves, or the Nordics, being the Pleiadiens. And we're going to find out that all of these sons of God of Genesis 6, Anunnaki, and Pleiadiens are all going to be grouped under that term, the best, because that's what we're going to find in Job chapter 38, where it says, "Who can loose the bands of Orion or bind the sweet influences of the Pleiades?" Now that's going to take us back to the connection that we had in the garden with the apple, which is going to be that sweet influence of the Pleiades, which was a temptation which was taken by Eve. We're going to find out that it's the very same knowledge that was promised to make one wise and like a god. In other words, illumination, all connected back to this apple, which is going to be all connected back to these 7 chakras, all connected back to these 7 stars, which are going to connect back to the Pleiadiens, which connect right on back to the sons of God of Genesis 6, which now connect us to the rising Kundalini serpent. Boom, right here in our face. So if you want to talk about fractal and hyper layers and hyper meanings and why and how this is incredibly hard to explain, that's it right there. That's why many people are unable to make heads or tails, because they're only seeing portions, and this thing isn't a portion, it's an interlocking whole. So let's go ahead and run down this connection before we go into the book of Genesis and show how all of this is going to interrelate. We're dealing here in this relationship from my spiritual point of view, the rising of the Kundalini spirit, the releasing of the locusts as they're connected to the Pleiadiens, at the very same time his rise through the 7 chakric energy centers as he manifests himself into a material form. As we're seeing it connected and being made to happen via this distortion or this raised vibration propaganda, which is causing people to willfully want his presence via this promise of the same promise of Genesis, that you'll be made a god. So we've got this spirit consciousness of which this Kundalini represents. Who? The fallen prince recorded in the Hebrew Bible. Also recorded in Sumerian terms as Enki, Lord of the flowing waters. Water equals the word, of which he's the mirror reflection of everything Christ does. He tries to mirror this to appear as Christ. So he's Lord of the flowing waters. Waters represents word. Word is going to represent breath. Breath has everything to do with Kundalini. And we're going to see that this breath of Kundalini is representing, as he's trying to apply himself to material form, the very same breath that was breathed into material form in the book of Genesis that we see described very early in that chapter. Incredible. 7 stars represent the Pleiades and also the 7 chakras. I'll be back.